Something is wrong with my family. I've always been the outsider in my family, being the youngest of my siblings. I am nothing like them in my personality or my looks, and they always tease me about being adopted. My childhood seemed decently bright, although none are perfect. My parents seemed loving and so did my siblings. But recently there's been something off. Maybe it was always there, but I never noticed it before now. It started 2 months ago when my dog got hit by a car. I came home and my mom was waiting at the door for me. When I came inside, she told me that my dog had been killed by a car. She seemed genuinely sad for me. She gave me a hug and told me she was sorry to tell me, but I noticed when I looked in the reflection from the mirror on the wall as I walked away that her face didn't look sad. She seemed happy, with a happy smile on her face as she looked at me walking towards my room with tears in my eyes, as if she was glad to see me suffering. She had this look in her eyes I've never seen before. It didn't look like my mom ... more like a face I'd see in a nightmare. I was surprised when I turned around to see her face looking completely sympathetic and sad for me. I couldn't help but look confused. She asked if I was okay, and I said yes I was, but I felt uneasy about it. Though I chalked it up to me being too upset and sad and I wasn't thinking clearly. The next time it happened was 2 weeks after that. I was in the kitchen with my sister, slicing a tomato to use on my sandwich, when I accidentally sliced my hand with the knife. A few drops of blood fell onto the counter and I dropped the knife and turned to wash my hands. I went to the bathroom and put a bandage on my cut. But when I returned I noticed something strange. The spot on the counter where my blood had fallen had no blood on it, but there was a small wet spot where it had been on the counter. My sister was pouring a glass of orange juice and asked if I was okay. I said I was, but I felt extremely anxious for some reason. I noticed she had a little blood on her finger and asked her why. She said she grabbed the knife and put it in the sink after I left. I don't know why I thought this, but I felt like she'd licked off my blood from the countertop. I checked the kitchen rag to see if she just wiped it up, but it was dry. I felt like she was staring at me all day for the rest of the day and it terrified me. The knife had no blood on it either, and it was in the sink. In the last month I've heard my dad and mom both laugh several times about made-up scenarios where I would die in a perceivedly humorous way, but when I mentioned that it felt inappropriate they said they were only joking of course and that they loved me very much. The amount of laughter they indulged in over this seemed disturbing, as they've never been very prone to laughing out loud at anything. And the scenarios were very graphically detailed and gory sounding, which came as a shock to me from parents who have never to my knowledge liked gore or morbid things. I keep finding my mom talking in private with my 2 sisters in their rooms, more than usual. And my sisters always look at me strangely when I walk in on it, with my mom yelling at me to please not disturb them when they're talking privately with an angry scowl on her face. She always comes to me later and tells me she's sorry for overreacting. And it feels odd when she does. She says it with a mostly blank face, but sometimes she looks ... amused. I feel unwelcome in my own home, like they don't want me here, even though they've given me no reason to think that outside of strange behavior. But the most shocking thing I've seen yet happened last night, and it's the reason I'm posting this. It was in the middle of the night. I heard something coming from downstairs at 2:32 a.m. and decided to go and look. I wish I hadn't. I saw my mom, my dad, and my 2 sisters huddled in a circle and praying, or at least it looked like prayer. There were a few candles in the room that cast a dim light on the scene, but it didn't seem real. I was peeking around the corner from the stairs and they couldn't see me as their eyes were closed. My mother seemed like she was chanting something in another language quietly to herself, while my sisters and father seemed to be shaking and occasionally whispering something. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. They've never been religious and I don't even know what religion this would be. The chanting from my mother got louder and louder until she was almost in a speaking voice. Then there was a whooshing sound and all the candles went out suddenly. I was trembling with fear, and I felt suddenly I was being watched. I had closed my eyes and looked away, deciding what to do ... But when I opened them my mother was standing directly in front of me. Her eyes looked completely black and her voice didn't sound like her voice. It sounded like a man's. She said, "Is everything okay, honey? You should be in bed." I was breathing hard and trembling but I couldn't speak. Suddenly she opened her mouth and screamed in my face, "Go to bed." And I must have blacked out. When I woke up I was in my bed and the sun was coming up. I could hear my mom and sisters laughing downstairs while they ate breakfast. I'm afraid to ask them about last night because I feel almost like it's a bad dream. And if it's not, I don't want to know any more about it. I'm scared and I want out, and I think they're gonna kill me.